Now can we hear me? Oh, yes, but I feel like I'm very loud. Very loud indeed. Dee, 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 dee. See, this is why. This is this is why we're doing the stream so that I can test these things. There we go. We are live. This is a little bit of a test stream, so apologies if a few things are a bit weird. But I wanted to do this test stream because of these issues. Yeah, so loud. Hang on. Let's do that and put a limiter on it. Let's put the compressor on it too. And hopefully that will make it just a little bit more manageable in terms of the output. There we go. Should be a little bit quieter now, hopefully. Let me just drop this also. And bada bing, bada boom. There we are. Yeah, I know that we don't usually do free practice streams, is what I was saying, but as you can see by the few technical difficulties that we've just had, I wanted to do a little bit of a practice stream because I've changed a few things around. I've made some setting changes. I want to try a couple of different bits and pieces. And because it's a sprint weekend and because we've got now 5, 6, including the post race, 6 streams this weekend, I wanted to make sure that they were all going to actually work. So that's why we're live. And we are just going to play around with a couple of settings in the background, but feel free to have a chat. Hello, everybody. How are we feeling? Avil was in here first. Trains to Planes. Hello, hello. Preet, Flip, Rishi. Sally's in the chat as well. Hello, Sally. How's it going? Is this my first FP1 stream? It might be, you know. It actually might be the first FP1 stream. Bit of a weird... We don't normally do free practice streams, mainly because, one, I work on Fridays, so it wouldn't work at all to have free practice streams, because they're normally on a Friday, but it's the summer holidays in the UK. Plus, I've got a new job starting in September, so maybe we'll be able to do Fridays. So we can keep that as a... We'll put a pin in that for now. Quick question, go for it. But also, yeah, I wanted to double check some settings and bits and pieces because we have lots of live streams to come this weekend and a few, sprint qualifying later on today, the sprint race tomorrow morning, qualifying as well, and then the Grand Prix on Sunday. So it is very, very busy this weekend. And I didn't want all of the settings to be completely and utterly wrong going into one of the live streams. But I think we're there now. Is there any problems? Any lag? Am I really loud? Am I super quiet now? Do I need to change anything else? Because I have changed the microphone and the inputs because I had a bit of a problem with the video that I made. And I've also changed the camera around because I also had a little bit of a problem with one of the videos that I made. And therefore, wanted to actually check everything was working. If you did see the video on Monday, I think I released it, maybe Tuesday. It was okay. You know, I think you could tell it was my first video in a new space, and a few things weren't quite set up perfectly. Sounds calming. Good. No, it's good. Perfect. Good luck with my new job. Thank you very much. Not for a few weeks, to be honest. Only 7 likes? That is ridiculous. To be fair, I have no idea how many people will join us for this because I've never done a free practice stream, so I have no gauge on how many people actually watch free practice. I watch free practice when I can. I normally put it on in the background whilst doing something else, though. I don't know how many people like actively stare and watch free practice, but that's what we're going to be doing, whilst I also do some bits in the background. Sounds with the mic is ASMR. Didn't answer me. Oh, sorry, I did not see. Ah, good. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that will get you banned, if I'm honest. Drake has died. Okay. It was a surprise stream. Yeah, I didn't advertise it. We'll just thought I'd pop in. I was going to do it completely private and then watch it back after the fact, but I was like, what's the point? Let's just do it live. We can fix things whilst people are here. And you guys can help with the behind the scenes. Because that's sometimes what I do. Sometimes I have to stream during a free practice or stream during like a non-competitive session for the weekend, make sure that everything is set up, especially when like multi-viewer does a big update or something like that. Make sure that everything is set up and then watch it back myself. So it's all a bit weird. Not a fan of the McLaren shirt. I got 2 new shirts that I've been wearing in videos. This McLaren shirt that I wore in the long form video. And also, if you've been watching any of the shorts recently, I've got a new Red Bull shirt as well. They were both gifts. So, wait there. Let's see then. Shall we double check that this is working? Oh, I think it might be. We are cleared for green flags. The track is up and running. Are the DRS sectors on there? Yes. Oh, this might actually be working perfectly. So we don't. You on practice day, I know. Gonna go to bed. No worries, Ioxy. Kimmy is gonna get pole. Ooh. I feel like this is just such a Max Verstappen circuit. When I think of Spa, I do think of Max Verstappen. So I just feel like it's going to be strange if it's not Max Verstappen on pole. I know that he hasn't been a few times, but I don't know why. I've just got this very clear connection between Spa and Max. Not a repeat of 2021. Hopefully the rain, well, it's not raining at the moment. It is predicted to rain sort of throughout the weekend, but it's not at the moment. So we can take the positive there and hope that it just stays like that. Piastri. What do you think then? Piastri versus Norris is the real sort of question, isn't it? Will Piastri be able to find a little bit more form? It's been all Norris in the last couple. Well, actually, I feel like Piastri was very unlucky not to win in Silverstone. That should have been his, really, shouldn't it? Considering he was, what, 14, 15 seconds ahead before the safety car. It was basically locked in that it was going to be Piastri's. It was only the fact that because of the mixed conditions, which you could argue played into Piastri's favour in the first place, but because of the mixed conditions then causing crashes and causing safety cars, that Piastri then ended up losing that lead to Lando. So, did he deserve to? You know, if it was a perfect world and the safety car didn't do the thing where it just stacks everybody back together again, you know, if we had a safety car and then the rule was everyone is allowed to go back to the gap that they had before the safety car, Piastri would have been perfect. But because we had the safety car and then he got the 10-second penalty, those two things kind of collided just at the wrong time. Lando flashback of rain. I mean, a few drivers have had their moments here in Spa. Like Up Eau Rouge is a tasty corner. Don't get me wrong; it's one of the most exhilarating parts of the Formula One calendar. But as we've seen, also it can be a little bit dangerous. Going up that hill. It's claimed a few drivers. And Lance Stroll has a problem and is boxing already. It'll be interesting to see how this free practice 1 session plays out because it is a sprint weekend in Spa. Not something that we've had before. The first ever sprint weekend in Spa. I don't know if it lends itself overly well to a sprint because obviously a sprint race is a shortened race, like a third of the distance of the actual Grand Prix. But because Spa is the longest track on the Formula One calendar, we're only going to get a few laps. We're not going to get very many laps at all. And therefore, not many opportunities for overtaking. Not that there's a lot of overtaking during sprint races usually anyway. So I'm just not sure how this is going to play out personally. Not sure it's the perfect choice for a sprint race, but maybe it'll prove me wrong. Maybe it'll prove me wrong. Carlos Sainz also with an issue. That Williams car, particularly Alex Albon's Williams car, actually Carlos Sainz as well. Both of the Williams cars been pretty tricky to get on top of recently, haven't they? I mean, Alex Albon had 3 DNFs in a row fairly recently after an incredible start to the year. And Carlos Sainz coming out of the pits, yeah, didn't even get the car up to speed before it started stuttering. So Carlos Sainz already coming to a stop and having to... Ooh. Is that some kind of liquid coming out of the bottom of that Williams car? Or was that just dust being kicked up by the tyres? Maybe just a bit of a dust, because obviously the track hasn't been used at all yet this weekend. The first free practice session and only free practice session for this weekend. Max Verstappen going through turn 5 now. Just looking to hook up his... I do really love that section of track, sort of through 5, 6, 7, down to 8, round and through 9. I feel like it's one of the trickier sections of the track, but also really, really satisfying when you get it right. The length of the sprint race is basically my settings for F1 25. Yeah, the sprint race is what most people would kind of do when racing on F1 25. I don't know many people who go for the full race experience when they're playing F1 25. That feels like a lot, you know? If you are trying to sit down and play the Formula 1 game, not many people have... What if you did qualifying full and then the race full, maybe with a little bit of free practice as well, like 4 hours you're probably looking at. Why am I looking like AI? Pass. Not sure. I'm a real boy, as Pinocchio once said. Hello, Loris, no skill. Is that a Dan no skill reference, or is that something different? I haven't spoken to Dan in a little while. Hit 200k recently. Deserves it. Dan is one of the most dedicated people I've ever met to like the Formula 1 sphere. NA on a Friday. Must be the summer holes. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But no, more so just needed to actually double check some settings and change some things around, which I think we've got sorted now. So we are all underway. It's already a long weekend. Is it a long weekend? Is it a bank holiday Monday or something? Am I missing? Or is it just because Formula 1 is already flying? Oh, thank you, John Paul, for subscribing to the channel. What do I think about Rick's F1 addiction? Lovely guy. Seems great. I've had very, very fleeting interactions with him. He seems quite shy, but that's absolutely fair enough. Like, but his content is hilarious and brilliant, as shown by the fact that he is absolutely flying right now. So... Please, can I make the screen horizontal? I think you may have joined the shorts stream. There's 2 streams. There's one which is short form, which is vertical. There is one which is long form, horizontal. There are 2 streams available to you. Am I an Oscar fan? I'm just a McLaren fan. Either of the McLarens would be amazing. So... either of those would be brilliant. Just one of them winning. What live timing app am I using? This is Multiviewer, which actually is a little bit further delayed than I would like. And we are supported by Multiviewer. They give us this completely for free, allow us access to use it on stream. They are wonderful people over there. I think I've even got one of their hats just behind me. why don't I show the actual practice? That would be super illegal. Like, I don't know how much Sky Sports pay for access to like the Formula One footage, but it's a lot. And I don't, unless you want to bankroll me and we can, you know, buy the TV rights from Sky Sports and then only on here would you be able to watch Formula One. That would be insane, right? If in the UK, I don't know though, because we've got a lot of viewers from elsewhere. We'd have to buy the global rights to Formula One, which means I think Apple TV have just put in a bid for like 150 million for the TV rights just for the US. So we've got to do that. But for every country, we're looking at like billions of dollars that we'd need to raise. And then if we did, we'd be able to buy the Formula One TV rights, and then only everyone in the world would have to watch Formula One through me, which would be insane. But that is how it works. Do I like Nicholas Latifi? I do. I think, you know, he took a lot of flack, bless him. You've got to be an incredibly skilled driver to even get into a Formula One car. But when you do get to Formula One, there are levels to this game, right? And unfortunately, Nicholas Latifi's level was not quite up there with your likes of Leclerc, Verstappen, even your likes of sort of Ocon, Hulkenberg, you know, those kind of midfield drivers. Latifi was sort of down there. And it didn't help that obviously the Williams car was also absolutely atrocious at that point, but he never quite got going, did Nicholas Latifi, did he? Shall we have a chat about various bits and pieces that are going on? Just looking at Yuki Tsunoda there, going through the final couple of corners at bus stop. I want to know your thoughts and feelings. What do we think is going to happen at Red Bull now? Is Christian Horner's leaving because of how they've fallen away in terms of their abilities over the last couple of years? You know, you look at 2023 being the most dominant season in Formula One history from the Red Bull team, and yet we're still under the same regulations, and they've fallen all the way down to 4th in the constructor standings. Or is it more of a driver play? You know, is Max Verstappen having those discussions with Mercedes sort of set alarm bells ringing a little bit at Red Bull? And the fact that actually without Max Verstappen, Red Bull would have 7 points this season, which does put them last in the Constructors' Championship. You know, if the Red Bull team was Lawson and Tsunoda this year, for instance, they would be scrambling with the Alpine team at the bottom of the standings right now, which, considering how good that car is, would be ridiculous. But, you know, you're looking at the fact that if they don't keep Max, then they'd be in real trouble. So is it more of a play that if you get rid of Christian Horner, then you're more guaranteed to keep Max Verstappen for the future? I also think that Max Verstappen to Mercedes, maybe for next year, is more unlikely, but I don't think this rules out 2027 in any way whatsoever. I think it's just opened the door for the discussions to go on a little bit longer, basically. I think it's just allowed Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff to think about 2027 and onwards. The only thing I can think of is the reason that Mercedes haven't got George Russell under a contract for 2026 yet is because George is hoping that he'll be able to get a 2 or maybe even 3-year deal, considering how good he has been doing inside of that Mercedes car. But Toto Wolff might be wanting to only give him a 1-year contract, maybe a 1+1 with like a clause in the middle, if they can get hold of Max Verstappen for 2027. Like, that's where I think we are with the Red Bull, Mercedes, Max Verstappen seat situation. I think Ford are about to bottle Red Bull's engine. Ooh. I think, well, Ford also kind of wanted rid of Christian Horner, right? You look at sort of a year, 18 months ago, whenever it was, where the news, let's call it that, came out about Christian Horner. You know, Ford were pretty staunchly against it. as I think everyone was, but Ford in particular were not very happy. And I think that's kind of not helped either. The fact that slowly Christian Horner's grip on the team has been sort of eking away, and now halfway through the season, looks like Max Verstappen isn't going to win the Drivers' Championship. Looks like Red Bull are kind of falling away in the Constructors' Championship. Felt like the right time maybe for a full overhaul. That overhaul has been coming, right? Leaving Rob Marshall, Adrian Newey, Jonathan Wheatley, they've all left recently as well. I think it is basically a reset, hitting the big reset button at Red Bull is what they've done. And getting Christian Horner out was the final bit of that reset more than anything else. But Oscar Piastri has just gone quickest in the middle sector. Max Verstappen's still quickest in the first and final sectors. This is what I mean. I just feel like this track is so Max Verstappen build. Although the McLarens are on the hard compound tyre. Can't build around only one driver. It's insane to do so. Yuki has proven that he can drive well in the past in the Racing Bulls. Then the problem is the Racing Bulls car is just so much nicer to drive. Like if you look at the Racing Bulls car versus almost all of the other cars on the grid, really, it seems quite responsive. Most of the drivers go in there and quite like it. Daniel Ricciardo didn't, but I think that's more of a ground effect thing. You know, a lot of the drivers from the previous era, before the ground effect Formula One cars came in, did take time to adapt. You know, you could argue Lewis Hamilton hasn't been as competitive as he was in the previous era. Although, what does that kind of go against? Is that just because the Mercedes car wasn't quite good enough, or is it Lewis Hamilton not quite enjoying, well, he doesn't enjoy these new regulations of cars, does he? Hamilton has come out and said thank goodness that ground effect is going in 2026, because he really hasn't been a fan of it. But I think there's quite a few drivers that weren't quite able to adapt their skills to the ground effect era of cars, and that might be because they've already inherently just built up so many habits when driving a Formula One car that didn't quite apply to the new cars. Whereas, you know, you look at some of the drivers that have come in during the ground effect era and they've hit the ground running, and maybe it's because they don't know anything else, you know. They've been able to adapt to that. But the Racing Bull car is a particularly nice car to drive, and therefore you're getting ground effect will be there next year, but it's just very true coffee. Yeah, but I think it's the fact that it's not wholly dependent on that now, right? Like these cars this year and throughout 2022 to now have been so reliant on ground effect for so much of their performance, whereas next year it's kind of dying down at least a little bit. Where is Lewis? Sorry, I just came. He's down in 16th at the moment. He is on the hard compound tyre though, and might not be running a full race. He's just coming around turn 17, 18, oh sorry, 18, 19 at the end of the lap, and coming across the start finish line to go 11th fastest is where Lewis Hamilton is. But yeah, I think the RB or Racing Bulls, however you want to see it, is quite a nice car to drive. Like Isaac Hadjar has said that as well. And the problem is you go from possibly the nicest car to drive in the RB to the least nice car, or the worst car to drive in the Red Bull. And I think that's where actually a lot of their problems have been. And it's why Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda haven't been able to adapt incredibly decent performances, because if you look at, you know, Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda over the last couple of years, both times that Liam Lawson has come into that RB, he's driven incredibly well. He's been very quick. He's scored points. You know, you even go back to the first time that he replaced Daniel Ricciardo when Daniel Ricciardo broke his hand. He was great. Like that then sort of snowballed into him getting the opportunity in the second half of last year, and then getting the opportunity to go into a Red Bull, but wasn't able to take any of that performance from those races and actually turn it into any kind of performance in the Red Bull. And then you're seeing the same thing with Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda was so good at the beginning of last season, like by far and away the best midfield driver in terms of performances, and that's what got him the contract for this year at Racing Bulls in the first place. And then the first 2 races of this year, he was looking good. He only missed out on points really because of the RB strategy team in those first couple of Grand Prix weekends. And again, hasn't been able to translate any of that performance over to the Red Bull car. So I don't know if you can actually sort of blame the drivers there. I think you have to blame the fact that Red Bull and the way that it works between their 2 teams, the 2 cars that they've got, the RB versus the Red Bull, they are so dramatically different to one another that it's basically like driving in a different sport anyway. Like, there's no point in having your drivers show their skills and cut their teeth in a car that is so much different to the car they're eventually going to go into, you know? So I think that's the real problem that Red Bull have got, if I'm honest. I think is the going from really, really nice car to absolute worst car is the actual problem. Will the weather be on race day? The weather be on race day? It's looking kind of wet, if I'm honest. Looking like it's going to be a rather damp weekend. Not at the moment, though. Max Verstappen just coming in to the pits there to get a fresh set of tyres on. Nice little practice pit stop for the Red Bull team there. Keep in mind the RB that Danny Rick drove wasn't influenced by Marquez. The RB this year was, so maybe Red Bull hope. That's very true. It's very true. Marquez, kind of the way that he's been able to adapt that RB does seem like in his time there, they have made the car easier and easier and easier to drive. That is very true. You know, coming into 2023 was a pretty tricky car, but then Tsunoda's still performed in 2023. Tsunoda's been very good throughout this era of car. Like, was it 2022 when he came 4th in Abu Dhabi, or is that 2021? Because Yuki Tsunoda's best finish ever is a 4th place in Abu Dhabi. Can't remember if it was 21 or 22. But even since then, he's been a regular point scoring finisher. He's been in and amongst it. Of course, there were discussions about him and whether he was good enough, but he's now in his 5th year in the sport, Yuki Tsunoda. And you don't get to 5 years unless you've done pretty well throughout some of them. So people say that Red Bull will be in trouble with the car if Max leaves. But they do have an RB car they can start to go towards if necessary. Well, no, because they are 2 separate teams. So, yeah, they can only share so much. That's why the RB is so different to the Red Bull. They're so different to one another because they are 2 separate entities. They're 2 separate teams. It's just the Red Bull group own both of them. And therefore, the drivers can kind of be swapped in and out. But it's not like the Red Bull team can, you know, nab an engine from the RB team or vice versa. They are 2 separate entities still. Is it checkered flag? It is not. We've got 37 minutes left of free practice 1 still to go. I love these statistics. So looking at the car performance between Austria and Britain and the fact that kind of Mercedes have gained, Red Bull have gained on McLaren as well, Ferrari have gained a little bit. But Racing Bulls, Alpine, Williams have all kind of fallen away. The McLaren car has been incredibly well put together, hasn't it? Haas, though, have gained pretty considerably. Kick Sauber have fallen away, but not quite as much as the rest of the field. I agree that Red Bull's car will be very bad because it's based around Max. The problem is that they also have is going into 2026 with the regulations completely changing. Have they still sort of worked that 2026 car around Max Verstappen as well? And I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's that the car is based around Max. I think it's the fact that the way Max finds performance in the car is that they have to go down a very narrow window. Like, I think Alex Albon put it really well before when he was talking about it. I think it was on the High Performance podcast or possibly the F1 podcast, something like that. Alex Albon has been on a lot of podcasts recently, but he was talking about that and the fact that the car is not necessarily built around Max Verstappen, but it's more so that Max Verstappen takes the car, and to find more performance, he realizes that it goes in a certain driving style. And Max Verstappen's driving style just sort of only goes in one direction, makes the car incredibly pointy. And Albon sort of said it's a bit like when you are playing a video game and you turn the sensitivity up really, really high so that even the tiniest of adjustments inside of the car has a dramatic effect. Otherwise, you know, you've always, anyone who's played like an FPS game on the computer, you know you can dial up your mouse sensitivity. And when you dial that up to the absolute maximum, every tiny little adjustment you make to your mouse then, you know, sends the whole thing, sends the cursor of the mouse flying across the screen at 1,000 miles an hour. And that's what the Red Bull car feels like, because Max Verstappen wants that sensitivity. Max Verstappen likes to feel absolutely every single nuance of every single corner. He likes to know that input. Whereas a lot of drivers don't really want it to be as pointy as that and as sensitive. You've got kind of the flip end of that. Alpine recently have been talking about, or Gasly in recent interviews, been talking about how the Alpine car has none of that. Doesn't feel very pointy at all, gives you no kind of feedback, and doesn't really sort of adjust to the inputs you feel like you're putting into the car. So you can build the cars in different ways, but yeah, the Red Bull do have the design data from RB because they provide the engines. That's very true. They can get that kind of formatting, but in terms of aero and things like that, there's not a lot they can do. But as you say, like, they're going into 2026 anyway, and a lot of what we've got on the cars right now is going to be completely readjusted for the 2026 regulations too, and therefore, why isn't Carlos driving? Yeah, issue for Carlos. Right at the beginning of the session, looked like there was possibly some kind of liquid coming out of the bottom of that Williams car. Williams' reliability this season has just been absolutely atrocious, hasn't it? Absolutely horrendous. Like, they completely gave up the first free practice session in Silverstone to try and get on top of this, to try and get on top of the fact that we're here to chat, Justin. It can start a 10-minute conversation. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, I think Williams are just in such a weird hole right now. Williams have got enough points in the bag that you would feel like they will finish best of the rest, especially considering Albon and Sainz, when the car is able to finish races, they generally finish the races pretty well. It's just that their reliability now is falling off a cliff. As I said, in Silverstone, they had one full free practice session to try and get on top of some of those issues. I remember Albon talking about how they completely wiped the slate clean during free practice one in Silverstone to try and understand what was going wrong, because he just had 3 DNFs in a row and had had enough of it, basically. But they still haven't quite been able to find that one thing that is causing these cars to just disintegrate, like that, especially the power units inside of the Williams car, which doesn't bode well for Mercedes, considering Mercedes are also having issues with their power units as well. Like, Kimi Antonelli had a good few DNFs in the last few weekends as well, and I know that some of them have been Kimi Antonelli's fault. You know, driving into Max Verstappen in Austria, that's Kimi Antonelli's fault, but coming to a stop in Imola the way that he did, and then again, it's not looking amazing for the Mercedes engines to kind of finish up this era of the Mercedes engine, is it? I can't remember what issue George Russell had, but George Russell had an issue as well during qualifying in Monaco. So, like, the Mercedes cars and the Mercedes powered cars, at least, are starting to fall apart. Maybe not the McLarens, to be fair, but McLaren will be looking at that and be a little bit concerned. Although they've locked in the Constructors' Championship at least. So it's more Piastri and Norris will be looking at that and being a little bit concerned as like, okay, when do I take these new engines? When do I decide to remove an engine, swap one in, that kind of thing to make sure that this car doesn't completely disintegrate around me? Notice how the McLaren doesn't have the issue? That's what I mean. I don't know how they've managed to get away with it, I guess. Teams actually maintain the engines. Very true. Very true. So yeah, it could be, as you say, Coffee. Maybe McLaren are doing a better job at just sort of... To be fair, maybe the McLaren car, because they've got the advantage in terms of aero, it does feel they're maybe running the engines just that little bit lower. Whereas actually, because Williams are searching for that performance, Williams kind of wanted to guarantee themselves that best of the rest spot. Maybe they've been running the engines a little hotter. Maybe they've been running the engines at higher settings. You don't know, obviously, the behind the scenes, but it does just feel a little bit strange, maybe, that two of the Mercedes-powered teams have had real troubles. I suppose Aston Martin haven't had too many troubles. Like, Fernando Alonso's had a few DNFs here and there, but they've mainly been issues outside of just the power unit. Why do Leclerc doesn't have laps? What do you mean? Where are you looking? He's got a lot of laps. I mean gap. Oh, Leclerc doesn't have a gap because he's leading. So the gap tells you how far off the fastest lap they were. So Charles Leclerc's lap was the quickest of anybody's so far. So he's at the top of the leaderboard. And then everybody else, the gap is how much time they need to make up if they wanted to match Charles Leclerc's time. Harad, Ferrari have some upgrades for this weekend. If that's true, what do you think about it? Yes, they do. Ferrari are sort of continuing to upgrade their car throughout 2025. I think they've realized, again, that the Ferrari this year is not where they wanted it to be. And they're using this year to not just upgrade this year's car, but sort of develop and think about how they can take some learnings into next year's car as well. So they're kind of using the rest of the season to next year's our year to kind of, in the most Ferrari way possible, think about how they can move forwards and think about 2026 and build upon that. Whether they'll be able to, whether it's really going to work for them, we have to wait and see with Ferrari, don't we? It never is an easy day when you're a Ferrari fan. Will I be streaming the other events this weekend? Yes, I am live later today for sprint qualifying. I'll be live tomorrow twice for the sprint race and qualifying for the Grand Prix, along with being live for the Grand Prix itself. And we're live after the Grand Prix for members. So if you do want to become a member of the channel, click the link in the description down below. Become a member, support the channel, and you get an additional post-race stream. So we have a little bit of a chat for sort of an hour and a bit after the Grand Prix about everything that's happened. But it's a bit more relaxed, a little bit less open. Obviously, behind the paywall, so there's a few less people and you get a bit more back and forth interaction. Would have missed FP1 without this live. Well, Manifesto, I'm there for you. I don't normally stream the free practice sessions. Maybe we will in the future. Maybe we'll see how this one goes. I don't know how many people we've even got here. But maybe we'll see. Ooh. Alex Albon. Some Flovis on the rear wing of that Williams car. New rear wing for the weekend. In fact, I'm going to try changing a setting here. Let me see how this goes. Thing with Ferraris, they have a really low R&D limit. True. That's the consequence of doing fairly well, right? Like coming runner-up in the championship last year and then possibly coming runner-up this year as well will cost them a little bit in terms of that R&D time. Do I know what tyres are best for Spa? Interesting that you asked that, because the tyres are going to be very different for this year's Spa compared to other years, because they have introduced a step softer. So normally when we have 3 tyre sets, we have like C1, C2, C3, or C3, C4, C5. So they're sequential. You pick 3 out of the set and you have a sequential 3. But this weekend, we've actually got a different tyre set. I can show you, but it will get rid of this and people will be very, very cross. If I can remember which one it is. This one here. You'll notice we've got the C1, C3, C4. So they've gone a step harder for the hard compound tire in the C1 and a step softer for the medium and soft. So normally we have the C1, C2, C3, but they've gone C1, skipped the C2 and gone C3, C4. So we do have a change. No, this one. We do have a change in terms of how the tires are actually set up for this weekend as well, which could be quite interesting. Now that just then allows a little bit more variation, doesn't it? Can we actually see, a C1 hard compound tire stint? What will that look like? The mediums and hards, like the 2 race tires that we effectively have, because they have a gap in between them now, it's effectively like running the softs versus the hards. And then you've got sort of a super soft that you can use in qualifying. So I think that could, as long as the race is dry, actually add a little bit of variation into the strategy here, because the only problem we've got is the race is looking like it's going to be wet. And then if it is wet, everybody's just going to be on the intermediate tires anyway. And this kind of change that they've made and this little adaptation that they've gone for this weekend won't actually be tested in the way that they want, and they'll be like, well, it didn't work. It's like, well, yeah, but it didn't work because we didn't actually get to see it because it was just wet the whole time. So interested to see how that develops as well, and whether or not, I really hope that we see a dry race just because of that, but then I also hope that we see a wet race, because wet races are fun. Like, we know this. Hello, Kim. How's it going? In general, hards will be good this weekend because the surface is very abrasive. That's very true. And that's why I think it will be weird in the race, because they've got to use the medium tire at some point, right? Like, you've got to go onto you have to use 2 sets of tires throughout the Grand Prix. But effectively, by going onto the medium, you're sort of going onto the soft, or what would have been the softs previously. So that would be an interesting dynamic change, right? Because you don't want to use the super soft now, or the C4. But the C3 isn't really a medium, it's more of a soft. So most of them are going to want to be leaning on the hard compound tire and using the hard compound tire for the majority of the Grand Prix. But does it open up the idea to start on the medium, go for sort of the overtakes early, try and get that tire out of the way? Or do you start on the hard and wait until you're lower fuel to then be able to not have such an abrasive run on the medium soft C3 tire later on? Like, I think it's actually an interesting thing that Pirelli have decided to do here. I just worry we're not actually going to see that interesting nature of it, because we're just going to end up with the wet race anyway. Yeah. Just race, I don't care. I mean, yeah, I understand what you mean. Of course, we do just want to see racing. But at the same time, there's a reason that we have the tyre compounds, and it affects it. Wet race, everyone loses their minds, and Alpine get a podium. You've been watching Brazil. It's 2024. I don't think it would be Alpine getting the podium this time around. Well, I mean, Hulkenberg did it in Silverstone a couple of weeks ago. So Would it be Hulkenberg again? Hulkenberg back-to-back podiums would be ridiculous, considering he's waited, what, 15 years of a Formula One career to get a podium on the board, and then he goes back-to-back. That would be insane, but also brilliant. If I was going to pick a team that might be able to sneak a podium in the wet conditions, Fernando Alonso, you know, although he got really screwed over in Silverstone. Hadjar and Lawson, I'm not just sure about. Maybe Williams, yeah. Make the 3 tyre compounds 3 seconds difference because the super closeness of the hard and medium. Well, that's what they've done. They've shifted it so that the hard and medium, there's a separation. It's a C1 and C3 rather than a C1 and C2. Albon podium. Albon would be great. I feel like Albon and Williams Albon deserves a podium. Like, he's done so well for them. He's finished 5th, what, 3 times this year? The problem is the reliability of that Williams car. And the fact they're not going ridiculously quickly right now. Albon's down in 14th place. Carlos Sainz has managed to actually get going and is down in 18th place anyway. Fernando's cursed by his powertrain. Very true. Yeah, Fernando has not had a fun year this year. At least he's been in the points in Spain, right? After no points in the first 8 races for Fernando Alonso, which is almost unheard of. He has been in the points every race since. But then you could argue that Silverstone was also quite unlucky because he should have probably been a lot higher up in the standings than he was. But they went for the right strategy with Stroll and the wrong strategy with Alonso, which kind of left Alonso in a bit of a weird position. Hello, Rohit. What's my prediction for the sprint? We'll do predictions later. We've got the predictions, don't you worry. In fact, if you want to get your predictions in, you can. Head over to the community tab on the channel. Look for this. It would have been released on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember which day I actually put it out. But there is a link and you can get your predictions in. If you want your predictions to be involved later on today for the sprint streams and for the Grand Prix, you can actually get your predictions fully in. So well worth it. Oh, is that why? I've been silly. Oh well. We're there now. I just realized we've been on the race one, not the quali one. This one would actually be a lot more interesting for free practice because you can see the different sector times and things like that. But I've just realized we were on the other one for this whole stream. Should I swap it now? I'll swap it now. We'll just pretend. We'll pretend we were on the right one. This is the qualifying look. The qualifying look to the stream. Yuki for World Drivers Champion. When Stroll gets podium in Force India, back to everyone. Oh, actually, do you know what we could... Can someone do me a favor? Is anyone watching on Twitch? Because I've just realized that one of the reasons I did this was to check whether or not the Twitch works. But I don't know if anyone's actually watching on Twitch because there have been no chat messages from anyone on Twitch. So I'm going to assume it's not working. That is one thing I wanted to double check with this stream. And I kind of forgot about until right now. Let's have a look. Oh no, it looks fine. But it says unstable. Average stream bitrate too high. Does anyone know how to edit that on Twitch? I'll change it around. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We're trying it. We'll see what happens. Who's my favorite driver? Probably Lando, but just because he's been at McLaren longer I'm not necessarily, you know, a snob as to which one. Love Lando. I do love Oscar, of course. Also one of my McLaren boys. Carlos Sainz. Everybody loves Carlos, don't they? Like, that's just there. Twitch doesn't work. I just checked. That might be why. Says that it failed to load. That would probably be why. Right, might have to have an investigation a little bit later on. I'll end the stream there. Thank you though, appreciate that. I completely forgot that I was doing that Twitch test as well. Streamlabs to fix Twitch for bitrate. I just don't know how to do that. If I'm honest, I feel like I should. Been streaming a long enough time that I probably should understand the background information of it all, but I just really don't. I just kind of click stream and hope that it works. If you want to help me out after the stream, that'd be great. Hi, Komatsu, making a good point, actually. Running the medium tires. Think Piastri will return to the top of the podium. It's tough, isn't it? 8 points between them is not a lot either. That's my worry. I kind of think, you know, I as much as I do want Oscar to win, and I'd love to see that happen, I think actually a Lando win this weekend would be better. Because then there's, what, 1 point? Assuming Oscar comes second, there'd be 1 point between them in the standings going into Hungary. And we know Hungary is going to be a controversial one when it comes to the McLaren drivers anyway. After what happened last year, and there's going to be discussions around that, of course. So I feel like Hungary, 1 point between them, just kind of sets us up perfectly for absolute fireworks, doesn't it? You know? It would just be really interesting to see that final Grand Prix before the summer break. 1 point between them in the standings, almost like a kind of king of the hill, right? It's like this is your last opportunity to put yourself top before the standings. Whereas if Oscar wins this weekend, the gap goes to 15 points, and the likelihood of Lando getting a 15-point swing without Oscar having some kind of reliability problem or issue, it's unlikely, right? This is perfect timing. Had your last exam today. Congratulations, mate. Appreciate it. Well done. You got when's the problem is you've done the exams. Now you got that like weird period where you're waiting for the results to actually know whether you can continue with your life. That's what I always felt. Like when I finished my uni exams, I was like, great, but I don't know if I can do the job that I want until I get the results back. So it's like waiting until that happens. Am I able to play the F1 music? I mean, yes. F1 game music, probably. The F1 like intro music, no. I think that is copyrighted. Max is going to win the F1 races. Piastri's going to win. I feel like Piastri, well, looking at the timing sheets right now, Piastri is kind of set up more so. Feels like more of a Piastri track. I don't know why. You just get feelings, and you have drivers that you just feel like will do better at certain Grand Prix circuits. Just feels like Spa is one of those weekends where Piastri will have the upper hand inside of the McLaren. But I think that's just an innate feeling. But Max is looking good. Leclerc looking quickest right now. What happened to McLaren last year in Hungary? It's a bit of a controversial one. So Piastri was leading. Then because of the pit stops and the way it worked out, Lando Norris was leading from Piastri in second. Lando Norris probably was quicker. Let's face it. Probably was quicker. But the team ordered Lando Norris to give Piastri the win so that Piastri could get his first victory in Formula One, or first full Grand Prix victory, because he has won a sprint race in Qatar as well. So yeah, last year in Hungary, the McLaren team had a big controversial kind of team orders back and forth where Lando was basically not giving up the position, said if Piastri wants the position, he has to get within how many seconds of me. I'm not just going to slow down and completely let him pass, blah, blah, blah. The team were then saying, look, you're going to need Oscar. Oscar needs this. The only reason Lando took the lead was because McLaren gave Lando the better pit strategy, whereas really they should have given Piastri the better pit strategy because Piastri was in front, etc., etc. It was all a big hoo-ha. And then, yeah, was all a bit contentious. Then we got the whole papaya rules saga. Of course, last year it wasn't as much of a problem because the reality of it was that Max was already so far ahead in the championship. There was going to need to be an insane second half of the season for Lando Norris to get anywhere close, which didn't happen. Like, as we know, Lando did finish second in the standings. Max got the title fairly comfortably in the end. But yeah, it's this year, with the two being very, very close to one another, 8 points at the moment in the standings, possibly 1 point going into next weekend. I think if that kind of thing happens again and they've got the papaya rules playing out, and we really, don't want to see that kind of back and forth between the McLaren team and their drivers. If anything, the better thing for the McLaren drivers and the better thing for the sport at the moment is that none of the other constructors have been consistent enough. It's been Ferrari are sometimes second best, Mercedes sometimes second best, Red Bull are sometimes second best, and none of them are anywhere close to the McLaren in terms of the Constructors' Championship. So the team can kind of just let the drivers race. As soon as the Constructors' Championship is fully wrapped up, they can just be like, you know what, guys, we've got what we want. We've got the Constructors' Championship. I know that you guys really want the Drivers' Championship, so off you go. See what happens. And then we go. I remember Australian people were really divided. Really? I feel like they'd all be quite in for that, right? Because of the fact that it was Oscar getting his first win. But then I suppose because of just the drama of the incident itself, possibly, is why you had that back and forth. Why is Stroll in first? Because he put in the fastest lap so far, 143.1. I didn't have time to follow F1. Could you summarize a little bit for me? Daniel, you are asking a big what's happened so far? The McLaren car has been by far and away the best. Piastri and Norris have kind of been back and forth as to which of the two of them has been quicker. Piastri's been quicker just about well enough that Piastri's leading the championship, but only by 8 points. Red Bull have been all over the place. Max Verstappen was kind of in the championship battle until sort of 2-3 races ago, really, where the Red Bull really did start to fall away from the McLaren, and therefore Red Bull have been really angry. They've dropped to 4th place in the constructors because the second seat at Red Bull just really hasn't been working for either Lawson or Tsunoda. Max Verstappen has scored all but 7 of their points in the championship so far. That's then led to Christian Horner also being ousted, because there's been a lot of links with Max Verstappen and Mercedes, because Mercedes also aren't winning races or winning championships at the moment. George Russell's been doing a really good job, but Kimi Antonelli's been very in and out. Kimi Antonelli's first 6 races were brilliant, but then since then it's kind of fallen off a cliff a little bit, because when he's been, taking the seat of Lewis Hamilton, that's quite a lot of pressure. Lewis Hamilton also hasn't had an amazing start to the season in Ferrari, despite winning the sprint race in China. It's been very up and down. He's been closer to Charles Leclerc than we were expecting him to be, though. Charles Leclerc really hasn't been happy with the car this season, because they were expecting to be in championship contention, but the Ferrari car just hasn't been able to deliver that. So they've kind of given up on this season. They are bringing upgrades now, but really looking towards 2026, because both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton have said that they want to change the DNA of that Ferrari car, if possible, to then be a little bit quicker in 2026. Going into the midfield, Alex Albon was actually fighting with the Ferraris in Miami, which was maybe one of the biggest eye-opening things. So they started off the season incredibly well to the Williams team, but then over the last few races have had reliability problems. Carlos Sainz hasn't quite hit the ground running either. Behind that, it's been absolute chaos. Everybody else, Haas, RB, Alpine, Aston Martin, they have been really up and down in terms of actual craziness of the midfield. Isaac Hadjar has probably been the standout because he's just been absolutely ridiculous. Nico Hulkenberg got his first ever podium in Formula One history in Silverstone last time out. The rookies have been doing pretty well, though. Behrman and Bortoletto maybe a little bit less good than we were expecting, considering how good they were coming into this year. But yeah, there's been a lot going on. That's a summary of the top 4 teams, plus a little bit of the midfield. But the midfield generally has been even more chaotic than the top teams, and the top teams have not been easy to follow either. But Daniel, you've come in just at the right time, because halfway through the year you kind of skipped the first half where everybody's shuffling into place. Now you've got the second half where we've got the championship battle to play out. We've got constructors championship battle, ups and downs. We've got Williams falling away and whether they'll be caught by some of those other back teams. RB, the switch of Christian Horner with Laurent Mekies, how will that affect Red Bull and RB moving forwards, considering RB were getting better and better. Watched all the F1 races this season so far. It's been pretty good. I think this season has been brilliant. Slightly biased in that I'm a McLaren fan, and McLaren are winning pretty much every weekend, give or take a few. What was it? Canada, where we haven't. Japan, where we haven't. I think that's it, right? Any more where McLaren haven't won? Australia, yeah. China, yes, although not the sprint. I'm excited. Should be, Daniel. Welcome to the channel. Hit subscribe, maybe. That'd be great. But we'll also be live later on today for sprint qualifying. We're then live tomorrow 2 times as well for the sprint race and the Grand Prix qualifying. And then also we are live for the Grand Prix, and for members we are live for a special post-race chat as well. So 6 live streams this weekend, plus content pretty much every single day, whether it be short form or long form. I've got a video that I was making about what I would predict the grid to look like if Max Verstappen went to Mercedes, but it's looking like that's less likely to happen. Still a video worth making, he asks to the 100+ people, 200+ people that are here right now. What do we think? Would we like to see a video where I have a sort of ramble about what I think the grid could look like if Max Verstappen did manage to sort of get that move to Mercedes done? Or would we rather just me actually kind of look at what the grid will likely look like for 2026 and beyond? Hopefully 2026 will be more competitive. More competitive at the front, yeah. I feel like that's the only thing this season is missing. Obviously, we've got a championship battle, which is great. We haven't had one of those in a little while because Max Verstappen's just been romping away with victories. But we've got a championship battle. I think the only thing is we haven't got a championship battle between teams. I think it's always just a little bit different when the championship battle is inter-team versus 2 different teams. I think there's a bit more spice to it when it's 2 different teams. Like, Oh, I don't know, actually. Hamilton-Rosberg was very spicy, and that was 2 Mercedes. But was it as spicy as Hamilton-Verstappen? Because then you've also got, you know, Toto Wolff versus Christian Horner in 2021 and all the behind the scenes with the 2 different teams going at each other as well. I think that's the only thing this year is missing, right? Is just one of the drivers, like whether it be Verstappen or Russell or Leclerc, kind of in the mix with the Mercedes, with the McLarens, just that little bit more often. Love the track map. Well, that is not me. That is my friends over at Multiviewer. You can download that too. You can have it for yourself. I got it right there on my screen, and then right there for you guys on the stream. My favorite F1 meme. Trying to get 2 teams is obviously more cool. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's the only thing this year is missing. But then behind that, you've got kind of Russell versus Verstappen playing out in the championship now. You got whether or not the Ferraris can get in and amongst it. And then, as I say, the midfield has been amazing this year. Like, I think the midfield cars has been more exciting than the front runners at points this year. You got the Albon versus Sainz storyline. The fact that Albon started the year so well. You got Hadjar emerging. You've got Hulkenberg continuing to put on performances, especially since Stake brought their upgrade in Spain. Hulkenberg has looked like a completely new demon and looks so much quicker. So Hulkenberg kind of doing the job. Gasly doing really well. The inter-team dynamic with Gasly versus whoever's next to him. Colapinto at the moment. Will it be doing again? Have to wait and see. It's just been absolute chaos in the midfield, which is what you want, right? You want that to be super, super competitive, because then it does mix up the rest of the pack. And it means that when the front runners kind of catch up to them, there's problems with traffic and various bits and pieces. Oh, here we go, though. Just to finish up the session, Max Verstappen has gone quickest in the first part of the lap. Oscar Piastri currently quickest with a 1:42.1. This might give us a little indication as to who's going to be where come qualifying, because they are on the soft compound tyres here. Verstappen on a slightly scrubbed set of softs, not wanting to use up a fresh set before we go into sprint qualifying. Of course, sprint qualifying, you have to use 2 sets of mediums anyway. So you have to use mediums in Q1 and Q2. Then you're only allowed to use softs if you get through to Q3. So this gives us a little bit of a look at what it might be like when it comes into Q3. Verstappen, though, personal best in Sector 2, but nowhere near Oscar Piastri's time. Lando Norris has just come across the start-finish line. Ooh, 0.4 of a second slower than his teammate. 1:42.0 versus a 1:42.5. Here comes Max Verstappen then. Can he split the McLarens, or is he going to shuffle in just behind? He can split the McLarens just about. It's a 1:42.4 from Verstappen. It's the second fastest time. So at the moment, and it's only one free practice session, and it's only a couple of fast laps from each of the drivers, but Piastri has the upper hand right now. Also, the Aston Martin looking like the best of the rest midfield car at the moment. Yuki Tsunoda all the way down in 18th. Oh, God. Is it going to be another Yuki Tsunoda nightmare weekend? I really hope not. I feel bad for Yuki at this point. Hadjar in 10th as well, kind of where he's expecting to be. Tom just says, Spa. We are at Spa. Hello, Antonio. Good afternoon. 40 degrees there. Wow. That is melting. Luckily, it's cooled down in the UK quite substantially, which is very nice indeed. But you have joined us just at the end of the stream because we have come to the end of the first free practice session and the only free practice session of the season. Yeah, my favorite meme. I was doing that, wasn't I? I feel like Charles Leclerc has the best memes. Maybe it's just because he's got the most memes. I was thinking about doing a video where I kind of go through all of the weird kind of the weird things that Charles Leclerc has done, like when he was a banana, when the water happened, you know. I feel like Charles Leclerc has the best memes. The I am stupid. What time is sprint quality? That is a great question. I should know the answer to, but I don't. Although I could make that stream live like now. Let me find it. I have Belgian Grand Prix sprint qualifying as going live on the channel right now. But we will be live in a couple of hours' time. Doing the practice starts. Oscar Piastri setting himself up, getting the revs right. Good start from Oscar Piastri, actually. Quali's in 3 hours. There you go. 3:30. So we'll be live at about 3, something like that. If you want to get your predictions in, get them in now. So if you head over to the community tab, you're looking for this. You can get your predictions in before I kind of put them all together. And we'll talk about them before the sprint qualifying itself. But yeah, we are going to be back in a few hours' time for that sprint qualifying. It's been a good actual little chat we had. I got to test out the few bits and pieces I wanted to test out. Appreciate all of you stopping by and saying hello. We are just having a little look. Yeah, the Twitch didn't quite work. I might try the Twitch again a little bit later on. We'll see what we can do there, but massively appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. If you could, hit the like button, subscribe maybe if you're 10:30 if you're in America Eastern. Oh yeah, we should go through all the time zones really. 12:30 a.m. in Australia. Whew. Goodness. But as I was saying, thank you guys for joining me. Appreciate it. Thank you for the first ever free practice stream. It was fun. Maybe we'll do this again in the future. Let me know if you would like that in the comments down below. And I will see you all very, very soon. Well, 3 hours time. Enjoy. I'm going to go get some lunch.